All right, back again for another deep dive. And today we're going to be tackling a story that I think really gripped the internet back in 2019.
Yeah.
The domestic violence arrest of rapper Bow Wow and his then-girlfriend Kiyomi Leslie.
Wow, yeah, this is a big one.
Now you might be thinking,
Huge.
didn't this already play out years ago?
Right.
And that's what makes it so interesting. This story has had a way of resurfacing,
Oh, yeah.
prompting these ongoing discussions about celebrity and accountability and the complexities of domestic violence. And we've got interrogation footage, we've got a 911 call, and we've got articles that attempt to unravel those conflicting narratives.
So much to dig into.
Yeah.
What makes this case so compelling even years later is that it wasn't just a one-time news blip. It really tapped into something I think deeper about how we as a culture consume these kinds of stories, especially when they involve public figures.
Exactly. So to understand the impact, we need to go back to the beginning. For anyone who might not be totally familiar, Bow Wow, whose real name is Shad Moss, rose to fame as a child rapper.
I remember.
Signed with Jermaine Dupri's So Def label.
Yeah.
He later went on to do some acting as well. Kiyomi Leslie, whose real name is Leslie Holden, had a career as a model and reality TV personality.
Yeah.
They were together for about a year and a half before this incident, and their relationship was very public.
And that public aspect is crucial.
Yeah.
Celebrity relationships are constantly under this microscope, under scrutiny. And that undeniably adds a whole other layer of complexity to a situation like this.
Okay, so let's get into that night in 2019.
All right.
We have this police interrogation video of Bow Wow after the arrest. And what struck me was how, despite being visibly shaken, he seemed incredibly focused on controlling how the story was being told.
Yeah, almost like he was acutely aware that even in this incredibly vulnerable moment, everything he said was being recorded and could potentially become public.
Yeah, he even asks the officers if he can wear makeup to cover his injuries before being taken out.
Wow. Yeah, he definitely seemed preoccupied with his public image. During the interrogation, he spends a lot of time trying to explain what happened, but mainly focuses on portraying Kiyomi as the aggressor.
Yeah.
He talks about their past issues and claims she has a drinking problem.
Yeah, but then we have the 911 call from Kiyomi.
Oh, right.
And it paints a completely different picture.
Okay.
You hear her voice and she's clearly distressed. She says Bow Wow physically assaulted her, wouldn't let her call for help.
Oh, wow.
It's a jarring contrast to Bow Wow's composed demeanor in that interrogation room.
Right. It really underscores the complexities of these kinds of situations.
Yeah.
Domestic violence is rarely straightforward.
Right.
And separating fact from fiction can be incredibly difficult, especially when emotions are running high.
Yeah. Let's actually take a listen to a short clip of that 911 call so you can hear the raw emotion in Kiyomi's voice.
Okay.
It's heartbreaking to hear.
Yeah.
And it really raises questions about how we as observers attempt to piece together these fragmented, often conflicting narratives.
This incident brings to light the inherent difficulties in determining the primary aggressor in domestic violence cases. It's rarely a simple case of he said, she said.
Yeah.
And there's often a complex history between the individuals involved.
The police, unable to figure out who the main aggressor was that night, ended up arresting both Bow Wow and Kiyomi for battery.
Oh, wow. They arrested both.
Yeah. And that decision really fueled the firestorm of public opinion.
I can imagine, yeah. When you add celebrity into the mix, it's like throwing gasoline on an already volatile situation, The public becomes deeply invested, and everyone seems to have an opinion.
And some media outlets fixated on Kiyomi's 911 call and her allegations of abuse, while others chose to highlight statements from Bow Wow's attorney, who insisted that Bow Wow was wrongfully arrested and that Kiyomi was the aggressor.
Right.
So
that conflicting coverage really highlights how public perception can be shaped, particularly in high-profile cases like this.
Yeah.
It also underscores the challenges victims often face when coming forward with their stories.
Right.
Will they be believed? Will they be judged? Will they be supported or condemned?
It's a lot to unpack, and we're just getting started.
Okay.
What's really fascinating is that this isn't just about one night in 2019. This story continued to unfold, revealing even more layers of complexity.
Oh.
And that's where we're headed next.
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
So this incident sparked a ton of debate and scrutiny online.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And things definitely didn't just fade away after the initial arrest. In the years that followed, both Bow Wow and Kiyomi continued to, address the events publicly.
And each time, it seemed to make the whole situation even more complicated.
Right. That's a common thread we see in cases involving public figures.
hmm
It's almost impossible to contain the narrative, especially in the age of social media.
Right.
Everything gets amplified,
Yeah.
dissected, and the court of public opinion can be incredibly swift and unforgiving.
In this case, it wasn't just the immediate aftermath.
Right.
Later on, Kiyomi came forward with accusations of past abuse,
Oh, wow.
alleging that there was a pattern of violence in their relationship that extended beyond that one night.
Okay.
She also talked about how she felt judged for calling the police, highlighting the tough spot so many victims find themselves in.
That's a really important point to unpack.
Yeah.
Victims of domestic violence often face immense pressure and stigma.
Yeah.
They might worry that they won't be believed, or that speaking out will lead to backlash, or even damage their careers and relationships.
It's incredibly difficult to come forward. And sadly, the public scrutiny that comes with celebrity can make that even harder.
It's a reminder that domestic violence is rarely like a clear-cut issue.
Right.
There's often a complex history of trauma and emotional baggage involved, and it's not always easy to pinpoint a single aggressor or to fully grasp what happened behind closed doors.
Exactly. And even though we may never know the full truth of what transpired between Bow Wow and Kiyomi, it's vital to acknowledge the broader context of domestic violence and the challenges victims face when trying to speak their truth.
Yeah.
Their stories deserve to be heard and taken seriously.
So this story continued to resurface each time, bringing a new wave of public attention.
Right.
In 2019, a video appeared where Bow Wow shared his own perspective on the altercation, but the details of his account weren't widely shared.
Okay.
Then in 2022, Kiyomi discussed the incident during an interview, expressing how she felt judged for reaching out to the police and hadn't received the support she needed.
These recurring discussions highlight just how deep the impact of this event was, not just for those directly involved, but for how the public perceives and understands domestic violence.
Right.
It becomes part of a larger conversation about accountability, the justice system, and the influence of fame and media.
And then, as if the story hadn't already been dissected enough,
Right.
the interrogation footage from that night in 2019 resurfaced online just this year in 2025.
Oh, wow.
You can imagine how that reignited public interest and sparked even more debate about what truly happened.
The fact that this case can still generate so much discussion years later really speaks to the power of social media.
Yeah.
Incidents like this have an incredibly long lifespan online. They can be revisited,
Right.
reinterpreted,
Yeah.
and re-examined over and over again.
It makes you think about how that constant rehashing, often with sensationalized headlines and clickbait, shapes our understanding of a very serious issue like domestic violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like we become more captivated by the drama itself than the underlying societal issue.
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
When these stories resurface, the focus can shift away from the systemic problems and onto the spectacle surrounding individual cases, especially when celebrities are involved.
Right. It can feel like we're getting caught up in the gossip instead of grappling with the very real problem of domestic violence.
And this brings us back to that essential question. How do we as individuals approach these complex narratives and try to form opinions that are actually informed?
Right.
It takes a conscious effort to look beyond the headlines, to think about the power dynamics at play, and to empathize with those involved without condoning any violence or abuse.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that there are always multiple sides to every story, and the truth is often somewhere in that messy gray area. We can't shy away from those nuances, even when they're uncomfortable.
Absolutely. This particular case, with all its conflicting accounts and years of public scrutiny, serves as a powerful example of that.
So after going through all of this, what do you think are the key takeaways for our listener?
I think this deep dive challenges us to examine our own biases and assumptions when we come across stories about domestic violence, especially those that are plastered all over social media. It's so easy to get swept up in the sensationalism, but we need to be more critical of the information we're consuming.
Yeah, it's also a reminder to seek out different perspectives and to be wary of those attention-grabbing headlines that might not tell the whole story.
And perhaps most importantly, we need to remember the very real human impact of these situations.
Right.
Behind the headlines, behind the social media debates, there are real lives being affected.
It's about recognizing that the stories we're discussing involve real people, and our understanding of these events should be rooted in empathy and a genuine desire to uncover the truth even when it's complicated.
I think that's well said.
Yeah.
This case doesn't offer any easy answers, but it definitely sparks important questions for us all to think about.
It certainly gives us a lot to ponder, and on that note, until next time, deep divers, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.